Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the second episode of the Eid milad nabi 2022 special. In the last episode, we went through the lineage and the family of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this episode, we will go through the birth and the childhood of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you haven't watched the first episode, go and watch it now, and inshallah we'll continue from here. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. On Monday, the 12th of Rabiul Awwal in the year of the elephant, Amina gave birth to a son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends many signs of which his chosen prophet is born, and on the 12th of Rabiul Awwal in the year 570 AD, so many signs were seen. Some were seen by Jewish scholars who had read in their scriptures of a coming prophet. One of those learned men in Yathrib, for instance, saw a brilliant new star that had never been seen before as he studied the heavens at the night. He called the people around him and pointed the star onto him, told them a prophet must have been born. That same night, another Jew was passing by the meeting place and the leaders of the Quraysh in Mecca. He asked them if a baby boy had just been born and told them that it was true, that this would be the prophet of an Arab nation. Amina sent news of the birth to her father-in-law, Abdul Muttalib, who was sitting near the Kaaba at the time. He was very happy and began at once to think of a name for the boy. An ordinary name would not do. 6 days came and he went and still had not decided. But on the 7th day, as he lay asleep near the Kaaba, Abdul Muttalib dreamt that he should give the baby the unusual name of Muhammad, just as Amina herself had dreamed. And the child was called Muhammad, which means the praised one. When Abdul Muttalib told the leaders of the Quraysh what he had called his grandson, many of them asked, "Why did you not choose the sort of name that is used by our people?" At once he replied, "I want him to be praised by Allah in the heavens and praised by the men on earth." Like many other women in Mecca, Amina decided to send her son away from the city for his early years to the desert, where it was more healthy. Women from the desert used to come to Mecca to collect the new babies, and they would then keep them until they developed into strong children, for which they were well paid by the parents. Among the women who traveled to Mecca to fetch a new baby at the time, Amina's son was born. A Bedouin woman named Halima with her husband and baby son. They had always been very poor, but this year things were harder than ever because they had been in famine. The donkey that earned Halima on the journey was so weak from hunger that he often stumbled. Halima's own baby son cried all the time because his mother could not feed him properly. Even the she-camel did not give them one drop of milk. Halima did not know what to do. She thought to herself, how can I possibly feed another baby when I haven't got enough milk even for my own son? At last they reached Mecca. All the other women of the tribe to which Halima belonged, the Bani Sa'id, found a child to take back with them, but not Halima. The only baby left was Muhammad. Usually the father paid the wet nurse, but Muhammad's father was dead. So no one wanted to take him, even though he was from one of the noblest family of the Quraysh. Halima did not want to take him either, but she did not want to be the only woman to go back from her tribe without a baby to bring up. She asked her husband whether she should take Muhammad or not. He advised her to do so, adding, "Perhaps Allah may bless us because of him." They started on the return journey, and as soon as Halima began to feed Muhammad, her milk suddenly increased, and she had enough for him and as well for her baby son also. When they went back home, everything began to change. The land became green, and the date trees, one of their main sources of food, gave lots of fruit. Even the sheep and their old she-camel began to give plenty of milk. Halima and her husband knew that this good fortune had come because they had the new baby, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whom they had come to love as if he were one of their own sons. When Muhammad was 2 years old, Halima took him back to his mother. She pleaded with Amina, however, to let her keep him for a little longer, and to her great joy, the mother agreed. During this time with Halima's family in the desert, Muhammad played with her children, and together they would take the sheep out to graze. At other times, however, Halima would often find him sitting alone. It is said that on one occasion, two angels came to Muhammad and washed his heart with snow. In this way, Allah made his heart pure for what He intended Muhammad to be greater than any man ever born and to become the seal of the prophets. Did we not expand the breast and for thee, and eased thee of thy burden which weighed down thy back, and exalted thy pain? So truly with hardship comes ease. Truly with hardship comes ease. So when thou art relieved, still toil and strive to please thy Lord. Quran, Surah 94, verse 1 to 8. When Halima finally took Muhammad back to Amina, he was a healthy, strong boy. Later he would look back with joy on the time he had spent with Halima, and he always thought of himself as one of the Bani Sa'ad. Muhammad returned to live with his mother in Mecca when he was about 3 years old. 3 years later, Amina decided to take her son to visit his uncles in Yathrib. She told her maid, Baraka, to prepare everything they would need for the long journey. And then they joined one of their caravans going there. They stayed in Yathrib for a month, and Muhammad enjoyed the visit with his cousins. The climate was very pleasant, and he learned to swim and to fly a kite. On their way back to Mecca, however, Amina became ill and died. She was buried in the village of Al-Abwa, not far from Yathrib. Muhammad returned sadly to Mecca with his mother's maid. He was now 6 years old and lost both his father and mother. He was then adopted by his grandfather Abdul Muttalib, who loved him dearly and kept him by his side at all times. It was the custom of Abdul Muttalib to sit on a blanket near the Kaaba. There he was always surrounded by people who had come to speak to him. No one was allowed to sit on the blanket with him, however, except for his grandson Muhammad. It shows how close they were with each other. Many times Abdul Muttalib was heard to say, "This boy will be a very important person one day." 2 years later, unfortunately, Abdul Muttalib also became ill, and Muhammad stayed by him constantly. And Abdul Muttalib told his son Abu Talib to adopt Muhammad after his death, which he did. Abu Talib had many children of his own, but Muhammad immediately became part of his family and the favorite child. The time came for Quraysh to prepare a caravan to go to Syria. Abu Talib was going with them, and he took Muhammad along. It was Muhammad's first journey to the north. After days of travel, the caravan arrived at a place near Syria where the Romans used to come to trade with the Arabs. Near the marketplace lived a monk called Bahira. His cell had been used by generations of monks before him and contained ancient manuscripts. Bahira saw the caravan in the distance and was amazed to see that over it was a large white cloud. It was the only cloud in a clear blue sky, and it appeared to be shading one of the travelers. The monk was even more surprised to see that the cloud seemed to follow the caravan but disappeared when the person it was shading sat under a tree. Bahira knew from the scriptures that a prophet was expected to come after Jesus, and it had been his wish to see this prophet before he died. Realizing what he had just seen was a miracle, he began to think that his wish might after all come true. The monk sent an invitation to the Meccans to come and eat with him. The Arabs were surprised because they often passed by and Bahira had never invited them before. When the group was all together for the meal, the monk said, "Is this everyone?" "No," said someone. A boy was left watching the camels. Bahira insisted that the boy should join them. The boy was Muhammad. When he arrived, Bahira said nothing, but watched him all through the meal. He noticed many things about his appearance, which he found in the description in the old manuscripts. Later on, he took him aside and asked Muhammad many questions. He soon found out how he felt about the idols in the Kaaba. When Bahira tried to make him swear by them, as the Arabs used to do, Muhammad said, "There is nothing more in this world that I hate more." They talked together about Allah and Muhammad's life and family. What was said made Bahira certain that this was indeed the Prophet who would follow Jesus. Then the monk went to Abu Talib and asked him how he was related to Muhammad. Abu Talib told him that Muhammad was his son. Bahira replied that this could not be so because the boy was destined to grow up an orphan, and he ordered Abu Talib to watch Muhammad with great care. There are many stories told about Muhammad's youth. Some tell of how he used to talk with the family sheep to graze and was always kind to them. While they used to graze, he would sit thinking about the mysteries of nature. Unlike those around him, he never worshipped idols and never swore by them. He also wondered why people were always struggling for power and money, and this saddened him and made him feel lonely. But he kept his feelings to himself. He was a quiet, thoughtful boy and rarely played with other boys of his age. On one occasion, however, Muhammad went with some other boys to a wedding in Mecca. When he reached the house, he heard the sounds of music and he suddenly felt tired and fell asleep. He didn't wake until the next morning and thus missed the celebrations. This is the end of this part of the series. From the next episode, we will focus on Prophet's marriage and from his 25 years old and above. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.